Jackie Bonath was a public school teacher for 14 years before quitting her job earlier this year to launch Creekside Cottage School, a full-time multi-age microschool located in Gahanna, Ohio, a close suburb of Columbus that is focused on nature-based learning. And Creekside Cottage School is about to launch, about to open its doors for the first time this fall. And Jackie already has 20 learners enrolled and more tours happening over the coming weeks. So, Jackie Boneth, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to learn from all the educators and entrepreneurs and people you've had on your podcast.
Well, it's so great to have you here. I was thrilled to get your message or email a few weeks ago saying that you had just recently quit your job and were starting a micro school and had listened to some of the Liberated podcast episodes and felt like you were in good company with some other, former public school teachers and other entrepreneurial parents and educators who are creating these innovative schools and spaces. So it's just great to be able to have you on the show to talk about your experience. And I wonder if we could start kind of in the early days, Jackie, with what inspired you to get into education and teaching from the beginning?
I was very shy growing up and I went to a huge high school, like graduated with like 600, almost 600. And so being shy, I just like never found my place, but my mom was a preschool teacher. And so they cut busing in our district one year. So I would walk to my mom's preschool, and she was still teaching, and I would just hang out with these like 3.5 to 5 year olds. And I loved it, right? Like they all loved me. They wanted me to read to them. And so that kind of like launched, like, I just love being around kids. Um, and then when I went to college, I jumped right into early childhood education. Loved it. And the school that I went to, they had us in the classroom from freshman year. So like I got to be in the classroom with different ages and different kids, and that reaffirmed that like, yes, this is what I want to do. I love teaching. I love being with kids. Like I babysat growing up, so like it was just easy, right? Like I just knew.
Yeah, and you spent pretty much your entire career, 14 years, as an elementary school teacher in the public schools. What was that experience like for you?
Um, Amazing, to be honest. I loved all of my schools that I taught at. I loved all of my grades that I was with. I have always taught fourth and fifth grade. I've done tutoring for, you know, kindergarten through fifth. But they've been great. I started in a charter school in Colorado Springs, and um, it was an amazing charter school. Charter schools I found out in Colorado were different than the charter schools we have in Ohio. Like there was huge wait lists for the charter schools in Colorado, and um, it was like the place to be where I was at, and it was an amazing school. And so that was my foundation of where I started teaching, was in that charter school. And they did like huge theme days, you know, every 7 or 8 weeks or so, and we got to like turn our hallway into medieval castles and stuff like that. Um, and so it was incredible, and kids loved this learning environment. And then I moved to a traditional public school in Colorado, and the school was, you know, still amazing, but I saw that a little bit more focused on like standards-based learning, and we didn't have time for those really fun, like big dramatic type things. And but like I said, I still loved it. I just loved being with the kids and doing all of that. And then we moved back to Ohio, um, and went to another public elementary school. And same thing. And I was like, I loved working with kids and I loved what they were doing. And thought that like the level of education was actually more rigorous when we moved back to Ohio. And I was like, this is incredible. Um, and then the pandemic happened, which, right, so many educators say. And I was like, what's broken here? And I just couldn't figure it out. Like there was this disconnect between me loving education and like what happened. Like I had loved it. I had always said I'm never going to have teacher burnout. And then the pandemic happened, and like the years after it, I was like, okay, I feel this, but I
And
don't know why.
yeah, well, right. Maybe you didn't know why. Maybe it was just a feeling, but can you elaborate on that a little bit of what were you noticing?
So I noticed we became a lot more data driven after the pandemic. We our district put in more. So we have state test, right? And then we put in more testing throughout the year, 3 times a year to measure like growth and, to find students that were falling behind, which is amazing. But these tests, like on top of state test, it was becoming like 18 days of testing a year. And I know it's to find gaps, which I think is great, but it was like, oh, this is so draining. Like, and then once we did the testing and we found the numbers, then it was running all of these programs to try to get kiddos back up to where they need to be. But, and the kids are just getting burnout. And so I think I was feeling that burnout of like, there's no time left to do cool, fun, big projects because we're just playing a game of catch up. Um, and then we passed the new science of reading laws in Ohio, which I think is needed. It helps kiddos that are dyslexic and, have other reading needs get those needs met. But then all the curriculums changed, and it was like, here's the curriculum you need to use, and here's the day you need to be on this lesson. And it was like, oh my gosh, even more, we're stripped back from the freedom of building like a natural education or a fun education into the lives of these kiddos. So I think it was just like, building and seeing that like the joy of learning just diminish and diminish and diminish. And I couldn't name it, but I could feel it.
And at the same time, you have four children. Your youngest was just born earlier this spring. And how did your kind of perspective on education change with your own perspective as a parent, especially as your older ones were kind of nearing school age over the last few years?
So when my oldest was going into kindergarten, he will be going into second. So this would have been 2 years ago. Um, we did search for a different couple of different kindergartens on where to place him. I just wanted to find the perfect path for him from the get-go, right? Like I didn't want to like put him in the school in our neighborhood and then move him to the school I was teaching at and then be like, oh wait, but this is actually it. So we toured some nature-based schools, we toured some Montessori schools before he was in kindergarten. We toured even just some private schools. And we were just like, this isn't it. Like we weren't finding it. So we put him in the school that I was at, and this school is truly wonderful. It's a great public school. The people there are amazing. Everything is it's wonderful. And he did okay for the most part. He struggled academically. He kept asking why everyone can read and he can't read. So we just would throw away his report cards. Like we would look at them at first, but then we would be like, oh no, what's going on? We need all these interventions. Well, you know what I mean? And so we were stressing out and he was stressing out. And then we'd have to remind ourselves, like, no, he's okay. He's okay. We know there's nothing developmentally going on. But we just needed to constantly remind ourselves and it became a little bit exhausting. And then it started with like him hating school. And then it started with he just couldn't connect to any friends at school. And so he wasn't having any joy in learning and he wasn't having any joy in peers. And he has grown up, we live in the suburbs, but he's grown up outside his entire life. We are in Michigan almost all the time in the summer, and he loves, anything nature-based. He could spend hours with independent play out there. And so he would want to be at recess, like catching grasshoppers or finding mushrooms or digging in the dirt. And everyone else is like wanting to play soccer. And so he was just getting further and further from his peers a little bit, and just that he couldn't connect. Um, so we started to see both of those going down kindergarten year. And then his first grade year, it actually picked back up. He was connecting a bit with reading, just developmentally. I think he was ready to start reading. And he started to find a few friends and a new class. And so things were getting better. And then it was March of, it was actually like the beginning of his first grade year that someone had offered us the space to open up a school. And so it was like, I need to let me think about this, right? Like it was like it was weird timing because kindergarten was so hard for him. And so if it would have happened like in the midst of his kindergarten year, I would have been like, yes, let's go right now. And then it got a little bit better and we were offered the space to open the school. So I think it was like, do we do it? Is it worth it? And then it took me like 12 hours to be like, yes, it's worth it. In the long run, it's worth it.
Yeah. And so when did you decide that you wanted to open a school? Was it prompted by your son's kindergarten year, or had you been thinking about it kind of since COVID and seeing the disconnect in the classroom
Yeah, so
between bringing it?
I had been thinking about it as like a big lofty dream.
Okay.
Like,
Since COVID.
yes.
Since
Yeah, and I did
COVID. Yeah.
Tinkergarten. Do you know what Tinkergarten?
Yes,
Have you
of
heard of Tinkergarten? I
course.
was a Tinkergarten leader
Yeah.
for 2 years before COVID, and
Yeah.
then had our second born right after the pandemic started, and that's when Tinkergarten kind of didn't shut down, but the classes went away at that time too.
Yeah.
Um, and so I always would say like something is broken in education. I don't know what it is. I just wish I could teach kids outside. Like I would just say that all the time to like my friends and moms groups that I was in and at my book club. Um, but never ever thinking like this is a real thing. And then in my son's kindergarten year, a friend had texted me and she was like, "Do you know of any small schools in our area?" And I was like, "No," but I started Googling and I found an Acton in the area. And I was like, look at this." And so we both toured it and we were like blown away with
Yeah.
seeing this small school setting and the owner of the school, he's incredible. And what the kids were doing independently was so incredible. And we both just kept going to tour it. And so I was like, wow, this is so cool. Maybe we should enroll him, but it still wasn't an idea. Um,
You were
for me,
still thinking of being, sort of seeking something different,
yes,
not
exactly.
necessarily building it yet.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah. And then this is so silly, but it's like 35, 40 minutes away from me where I'm at on this side of Columbus. So I was like, I don't want to do that drive. Like, as much as I want something different for him and even for me, like I could apply to work there if they had openings. I don't want to drive 40 minutes. And we didn't want to move. So, like that was like February of his kindergarten year. And then it was like February 26th or something. Um, I was walking up from the nursery at our church, and the children's director, she's like, "Hey," she just saw me coming up the steps. She's like, "Hey, do you still want to open a nature school?" And I was like, "Yep, that's my big dream." And she's like, "Well, do you want to do it here?" And I was like, "What?" Like, totally, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a conversation we had ever had before or anything. She's like, "Yeah, we have these classrooms that aren't being used. We've talked, and we would love to offer you the space." And I was like, let me think about this. And then the next morning I text her and I was like, yes, I don't know what it means or what it looks like, but yes, let's figure this out.
That's a dream, Jackie. I mean, I often hear on founders on this podcast talking about how difficult location is, right? That's often one of the biggest startup challenges is finding a location that will work and that'll be affordable and flexible and, meet all sorts of local ordinances and all those kinds of things. So the fact that that fell into your lap, must have been really a great sort of signal that you should go ahead and become
Absolutely.
a school founder. So this was a little over a year ago then, is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yep.
then what did you spend that next year doing once you knew you could have that space?
So those first couple of months, like March through May, we met with a couple more people at the church to make sure like what they were looking for in renting out the space and what I was looking for was similar. And we were on the same page, and I had told them, like, I don't want to be connected necessarily with the church, like a ministry of the church. I just want to do our own, like, secular education, just because this area is so diverse and right. And so I didn't want to put us in one category. And the church was like, that's great. We just want people using the space. And so, like, things like that, we just kind of talked through over those couple months and, realized like, yep, we're on the same page. So then, the summer, I was still like, I need to decide if I'm actually going to do this. And like, I just was hesitant, right? Because I didn't know much. And then in August, I was like, all right, I'm going to research all that I can between now and December. Um, and if it keeps rolling, it keeps rolling. And if I can't figure stuff out, then this like, that'll be my sign that this isn't meant to happen. And like everything I would research, like was so easy. Like I filed to be a nonprofit with the state of Ohio, and the next day I was approved. Like it was just, so like things were just falling into place. And then I would doubt something or like I would search like I have no idea what to do about this. And I would listen to an episode of the podcast or like find someone's microschool website and be like, "Oh, they did like that's how they did it. I reached out to someone that you had interviewed months ago and was like, "Hey, I'm new to this. I don't know how to do this part." And she like met with me on a Zoom call and talked me through some things. Like it was just anything I questioned and I would ask for help, people were like, "Yeah, that's you can do it this way." And so um we then in December were like, "Okay, things are rolling." So we renovated the classrooms we're renting in the church. We painted them and clean them up and put new furniture in them. And then we were going to hold 3 open houses in January, and just see who came and if anyone was interested. And it was kind of at that point that I was like, if I get 2 people to enroll plus my 2 kiddos, then I'll resign. Like that'll be what I need to launch this, and we'll give it a year and see if it takes off. And so nobody came to the first open house except my friends.
Oh
My
no.
parents drove down a couple hours and surprised me, and they were there, and just the people I asked to be on my board were there. And but nobody came. And so a few
Oh
days
no.
later, I went to my son's like preschool brunch, and our friends were there, and she's one of my board members, and she was like, "I've been meaning to talk to you. We're enrolling our kids." And I was like, "What?" Like it wasn't even on my radar. She's just a dear friend who I asked to be on the board because we have similar values about how we want our kids educated. And she was like, "We're in." And so that was it. Those were the 2 kiddos. And then about like once a week from then on, I've given tours and had people enrolled, about once every 1 to 2 weeks from that point.
That must have been deflating though, to hold an open house
Yeah.
and no one show up. That's sort of the worst nightmare, right, for a new school founder. Did you feel like, gosh, this isn't going to work. I should just give up? Or
Yeah.
what
And
was your reaction?
I was embarrassed because
Yeah, yeah,
all of these people that I had been on the board, like asked to be on the board, and they
yeah,
came with their families, like they brought their kids and their husbands, and my
yeah,
parents drove all the way down, and like, my parents had helped us like literally scrape tape off the floor and paint the walls and
yeah.
do all of this work. And so many people did because at the time I was pregnant with our fourth son, so like everyone was helping, and it was like, what am I doing? I'm so embarrassed, like, you know, and yeah, so it really didn't feel like it was going to take off. And then when other people, so those 2 signed up, and I was like, this is great, but I still
Yeah.
didn't think it was enough. Like I didn't plan on resigning at that point because I was like, they're some of our great friends. Like they're just being nice. You know what I mean? Like, um, and then a week later I gave a tour and that family signed up.
And how did those people start to hear about you and what you were doing? How did you start to get more families interested?
She found me just by searching my webs on like Google for a nature-based school, and she found
Mm,
me that way.
okay.
That was even before I had an Instagram, or I had refused social media because I just was like, ugh, feels icky. Um, and so she just found my website, and then the next 2 people were word of mouth. Um, and then my board talked me into like, you need to be on social media and to get that presence going. Um, which I did, but I don't think it's brought anyone to me. I think it's all been every single person that has found us has been word of mouth.
Word of mouth from people who are enrolling or who know about the school and are champions of it. I guess
Yeah,
in
so
what way? Yeah.
a lot because I taught in the district that we live in for
Mm.
9 years. So I think I just like a lot of people know of me as an educator. So like word started like once my name got out there, like, hey, have you heard that Jackie's opening this school? And they'd be like, Jackie, what? My daughter had her for fourth, or like, oh, I was hoping to get her for fifth grade, or you know what I mean? Like it was like that. And my husband is also an assistant principal in the district, so we know a lot of people that way. And then I think people who found the school have been just talking about it so much. I know one family, she signed up her daughter, and I've gotten like 3 people who have wanted toured just from her signing up her daughter.
And you have 20 students already enrolled. You haven't even opened your doors yet, but are, obviously ready to do so. You have more tours happening in the coming weeks. Tell us a little bit about sort of the ages of the students that you have currently enrolled and what the structure will be like each week for them.
Right now I have kindergartners through fourth graders, so incoming kinders through incoming fourth graders, signed up, and I've got two classrooms that we're renting. So I'm gonna put my youngers, like my K to twos, in one room, and my three to fives, three to fourths right now, unless I might get some fifth graders in the other room. And then I might put some of like my older second graders or more mature second graders with the olders, if wherever it's appropriate. Um, but we're going to be together as a school most of the day. Like it's not like we're separating them and they'll stay that way all day. Our school day runs from 8:30 to 3, Monday through Friday. Monday through Thursday, we're going to kind of follow the same schedule. So 8:30 to 9, we'll start outside every day. There's a playground literally at our door. So parents will just drop off and we'll start on that playground. And then once we have everyone, we'll go for a walk in the woods. They have over 10 acres, so we can just walk the woods. We've built paths back there. There's creeks. So we're just going to start with getting them like fresh air and, any wiggles that they want, they can have that time to do that in the morning. And then 9 to 11-ish. And I say ish because, like, if they're in some great game or some great play, like, we're just going to let them go for it, right? And we might start our morning later. That's just the freedom of our schedule with that. So 9 to 11, we'll do academics. So reading, writing, and math. I'm going to do homeschool. I'm using homeschool curriculums because they can be one-on-one in small group. And so I'll just do small groups. And then the other teacher that I hire will do small groups in her room. So we'll have those two rooms going while the other kids are working on independent work or buddy work. Or we're going to run a little classroom school economy so they can be working on their jobs and what they're working for. So that'll be 9 to 11. And then 11 to 1 is kind of like our big, break. We're going to do lunch. We have a beautiful shelter house outside with like a dozen picnic tables. So we'll be out there hopefully from 11 to 1 as much as possible with lunch, outdoor, just free play. And then we'll kind of bring them back down closer to 1 with um, like read aloud, some handicrafts, getting them using their hands, and nature study, some journaling and that kind of thing. And then from 1 to 3 is our project-based learning. So we're going to do 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks unit studies. So we'll do one that's all science, and then we'll do 6 weeks of history, and then 6 weeks of science, and we'll alternate. So when we come back inside, or if it's nice out, we'll just use the shelter house and we'll do the project-based learning outside. I'll teach, or the other teacher will teach like 20 minutes. We're going to start with engineering. So we might do like a day of bridges, and then the kids get the rest of the time to create a bridge or, whatever it is related to engineering that they want. And then for that 5 to 6 weeks, they'll build all of those projects that they want related to engineering, and we'll do a showcase at the end of those 5 to 6 weeks for that. And parents can come in then and see what they've done through project-based learning, as well as academically. We'll pull out all of their academics, and parents can come in it's like a conference, but we're all together and the kids are showing the parents their work.
Oh, it sounds so fabulous. And then you said Fridays are more excursions and yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna do we have a local group called Seeds of Caring in Columbus, which is just community-based or like community service projects for
Mm,
ages 2 and up. And so I've partnered with them. So we're going to do a project with them every month, like packing lunches for kiddos that need it, or making blankets for kids in the hospital, that kind of thing. So we're going to do projects once a term, and then we're going to do field trips we have great metro parks around Columbus. So we're going to go to a lot of the metro parks and do some of that learning. Then like our engineering unit, we're going to go to some engineering studios and get the kids working with an engineer.
mm,
Um, the library we can walk to. It's less than a mile. So we're going to do some Fridays. We're going to walk to the library, and then we're going to have people come to us too. So like
right.
an arborist will come and teach us about the trees on property.
So these 20 students that you have, and maybe more before you launch, are going to be technically homeschoolers
Mhm.
with your program and the way the homeschool laws work in Ohio. You're able to, parents are able to send their students to a microschool like Creekside Cottage School for the week for kind of full-time
Yep.
academics. Why not become just a regular private school? Why sort of this micro school model for homeschoolers?
That's a great question. When I first started the board, we really talked about this because we can get we can join the voucher program in the state of Ohio if we're a private school and we meet certain criteria, which we could do. It's like turning in attendance laws, getting our building inspected, which we can do because it's already inspected for the church, right? Like we would pass all of the things. And we'd have to give state testing to anyone who took the voucher program. Um, but it was those rules that made us be like, the reason I'm stepping away from public ed is to get away from all of these rules. And the parents some of them are leaving public ed to get away from these rules. And um, so as much as we wanted to be able to offer the voucher program to give families that money, it was like, well, then we lose a little bit bit of what it is we're trying to do. We have families that love to travel, and one family was getting truancy letters in the mail because they had gone to Florida for 2 weeks to visit grandma. And they had missed, that made them miss so many hours in public school. And so then they were getting in trouble and they were like, we just want to be able to go to Florida and see grandma when we want. And then other parents who were like, yeah, my kid is missing, this many days and they're falling behind in the curriculum. Um, and so by keeping this homeschool status, it just puts parents in charge of their education. And then we become essentially the tutors educating their kids in the morning and then giving them this time to free play and be in nature and be with kids the rest of the day.
So great. So how big do you think you could go over the coming year? Do you plan to continue to enroll on an ongoing basis through this first academic year? I guess what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to stop at 24 this first year.
Okay.
Um, I do think we might get interest past 24, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing and that I launch, with the values and the mission statement that the board and I had come up with at the beginning. So we're going to stop at 24 this year. So me and another teacher. And then the next year, hopefully add another 12 and then get up to 48 in our elementary program. We have 4 classrooms that we can rent in that
Great.
space. So that would be that'd be a great cap is the 48. But my bigger goal is I want to grow with my oldest students. I just think if they've had this like
Mhm.
educational freedom essentially, and then to go to a typical middle school or high school would be hard. I know I'm just picturing my own son, right? My first grader, soon to be second grader, who just loves to learn on his own and to have this freedom. Like he would really struggle with that. So the plan is to grow with our oldest. So right now that's fourth graders. And then we'll see what that looks like as they get bigger. And I think we're going to need a different location for our olders. So
Mm,
when that time comes, do you know what I mean? Just because
yeah.
we have one hallway. And so if we've got a bunch of 5-year-olds and then a bunch of 14-year-olds in the same one hallway, that might be interesting. So we'll
Yeah.
be growing hopefully in the next 2 years. I don't know if that means a second campus for our olders or all of us on a second campus, but that's my big goal, my big dream.
Oh, I love that. And it sounds like you want to sort of retain that small classroom experience. So roughly one teacher for 12 students. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, 1 to 12. So right now I'm going to be hiring a second teacher. And then I also want to hire someone part-time
Yeah.
to be our permanent sub so the kids are familiar with them and just to kind of take on more of the admin stuff so that I can teach. They
Yeah.
can run the business and I can just be with kids and teach. So yeah, we'll hopefully stick to just 12 to 1 as our ratio and then have that extra person as our floater.
And how is the tuition model? You said that if you became a private school, you would be able to participate in some of the school choice programs that require private school designation. Without that, what is financial accessibility like for your families?
So it's the tuition is just the flat tuition, what it is right now. We don't have any assistance. I have a scholarship fund, and so there's nothing in it right now. But if we ever were to get money in there, we're just going to distribute it equally amongst all families to lower tuition. I just looked at all of the small schools that are around us. There's some private schools about our size, slight bigger because they've been around for a few years, but under 100. Um, and I just went as low as I could below their tuition rate. So I just looked at the market and picked the rate below that and then talked with my board and they were like, this rate, I was really stressing about it more than they were. They were like, the rate that we have is cheaper than families are paying right now for childcare in the area. And they were
Mhm.
like, so you're not being unreasonable with the rate. And so this is what we decided to go with. And then we'll lower as we can with any donations or grants that we get.
Yeah, and the tuition listed on the website is $9,450 for the year,
Yep.
which
Yep.
again is Monday through Friday,
Right. Yep.
all academics, nature-based
Yep.
learning, excursions,
All the
all of
field
these
trips are included in
wonderful.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, lower in cost, inherently lower in cost. So many of these micro schools are more financially accessible for more families. And who knows, maybe the school choice programs will expand to include micro schools like yours without adding any kind of strings attached.
It's happening in other states. So
Yeah.
maybe one day we'll get there. I don't
And
know.
that would be, you would participate if you were able to kind of retain that autonomy and not have those rules that
Yeah,
you're trying to get away from.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exciting. So it sounds like expansion is on the horizon. There'll be so much more interest in your program. As you look back now and think about the past year, year and a half that you've been sort of in the pre-launch stage, what advice would you give to other prospective founders, maybe public school teachers like you who are about to start another academic year as a school teacher, but are thinking about starting a new school? What advice would you give to them, as they think about launching at some point?
Um, just start. You have to start and you have to build a community. So it feels really lonely to do this. So many people that I worked with in the past year, when I say I'm starting a school, they'd be like, "What? Like, what are
Mm,
you even talking about?" Just because it's not known, especially in this area. I know in other states it is more known to have smaller schools and these micro schools, but just building a community and the National Microschooling Center has been huge. Like the support that they have and the people that I can connect to, like everyone I've reached out to has been so willing to answer my questions and help and be like, oh, try this. And so I think that just made me feel like I'm not alone. I'm not the only one just like making this up. This is actually a legitimate way to educate children. Um, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting. So you're not alone and just reach out. Reach out. There's people out there and it's really cool to be a part of this community.
so great. And that's microschoolingcenter.org is the National Microschooling Center's website. Definitely encourage listeners and viewers to check out the resources there. And, what about being an entrepreneur for you as kind of making that shift from a long time public school teacher to now an entrepreneur? What does that feel like as you get ready to launch?
Um, that's the scary part, right? But I think as an educator, of course, that's going to be the scary part because I know
Mm,
education, I don't know business. But it's the same thing. I just ask people, like, I know how to do a budget, right? Because my husband and I budget our personal stuff, but like a business budget, it was like, what even categories do I start? So I would literally Google like, Acton business model. I would just Google other schools and see if I could find anything and just to get a basis. And then I would reach out to my brother is a CPA. So I'd be like, can you help me set up a spreadsheet for this?
mm.
Or like I would just start asking people. I don't know how to do this, or like my sister's in marketing. So I'd be like, can you make our logo? Or I asked somebody else something and they were like, no, I have no idea how to help you with that, but I do know someone that can. So like that's how we got our payroll person is I just started asking questions on people out in the non-education world. And they're so willing to be helpful and to give me answers and um, jump on board. So the community, right? That's the foundation of the school is we just want kids to be in a community where they feel heard, where we're not too big. And then I'm trying to model that by getting our community involved with us and asking for help.
It's amazing. So, Jackie, if my listeners and viewers want to get a peek into your launch, follow your journey over this coming year, what is the best way for them to do that?
My email address is creeksidecottageschool@gmail.com, or I'm on Instagram at Creekside Cottage School, and then our website's the same thing, creeksidecottageschool.org.
Well, best wishes to you as you begin a new academic year and a new entrepreneurial journey. I look forward to having you back on the show at some point to reflect on these launch times and just best wishes to you. Thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you so much, Carrie. This has been great.